very important in cancer, and mTOR's most famous job, which is in the regulation of mRNA translation. So we're going to talk about that after we hear from Julie. I guess my first question is, who had a chance to mention isocitrate dehydrogenase in a casual conversation on Monday? If nobody raises your hand, I'm going to be like so disappointed. Thank you, Thomas. That's great. Nobody else had to think of a way to integrate it. You still have time. You can try it tonight. Just a dinner conversation. All right. So now I have the tremendous honor of introducing Julie Scolnik. So Julie is a professional flutist, and she is the parent of a recent Harvard alum and current Harvard student. And she's going to tell you about her experiences with cancer. And as we talked about on Monday, we are moving toward an era where we expect to have targeted therapies, meaning therapies that go in and very selectively take care of the cancer cells and leave all the other cells alone. So we have some of those now. Unfortunately, we don't have as many of those as we would like. And so many cancer therapies, as you know, are unable to just recognize the cancer cell. They affect many different cells that are actively dividing. So we're tremendously thrilled to have Julie here. This is her third or fourth?
I think it's at least fourth.
At least fourth.
Yeah.
And she has a camera. So is the camera all set, or do you want
I'm all set. I'm all set.
that?
It's really embarrassing, but my family keeps saying, "Why don't you take a movie so we can see what this is like?" So no.
Yes.
So here I am. No, doesn't one of you know Sophie? Is that you? Oh, good. Because this, I always find out after the fact. Somebody goes up to one of my kids and says, "Are you related to somebody named Julie?" And then they find out it's in their little moment. So now I've picked that out of the way. Nice to meet you. I'm very happy to be here because this is not what I normally do with my life. I don't give talks, period, except to introduce concerts. I never talk about my medical stuff, except here. And I do another one on lungs because I had a collapsed lung once. So this is my 2 moments as guest speaker at HMS, and I'm really proud of it. I'm starting to put it in my bio now. I'm trying to figure out why it's so good for you to have somebody like me come and talk, because you have so many great professors and you learn so much, but maybe it's because you're just hearing it from a normal person who did not expect to get cancer. The first thing that people normally ask me is, did it run in your family? Did you smoke, drink, do all sorts of bad things? The story is that I was 50 years old and went for a routine mammogram. Doctor came out and said something a little suspicious. We'd like you to have an MRI. And I got very panicky. I said, stay calm, stay calm. After the MRI, they said, we'd like you to have a little biopsy. Stay calm, stay calm. Maybe it'll just be a little something, a little couple weeks of radiation. But in fact, they came out after the biopsy and said, I'm very sorry, but it is an early cancer, and I'm afraid we're not going to be able to save your breast. Not the great news that any person wants to hear. It's so shocking that you just feel so unbelievably shocked by it that you just say, okay, you know, well, I don't know. I can't remember, to tell you the truth. I think I probably cried for 3 months, and then I moved on. So what I had to have was one-sided mastectomy and reconstruction, which happened at the same time. The beautiful thing about great doctors like at Beth Israel and Brigham is that they really know what they're doing. And you leave the hospital looking kind of like a normal person because they do the reconstruction at the same time. Otherwise, like you see in some of these really scary movies, they always show women with scars and it's so creepy. And you never really feel that disfigured. I mean, not as bad as it could be because you leave feeling symmetrical. Okay. After that, I did have to go through 8 sessions of chemo every 2 weeks. So from September to December, I came in, offered a very kind nurse my arm, red poison flowed in. It made me feel disgusting. My husband came with me. He sat there and ate bad hospital sandwiches and read the New York Times and said funny things, made me laugh. They always said, before I started chemo, they said, oh, this is a wonderful place for chemo. It's just like a living room. It's not like a living room. It's a hospital room with a lot of sad-looking people wearing scarves and some young people, and it is horrible. But they're very nice over there, and you know, it's just the first time they showed me around before the chemo started, these ladies walking around with the sandwiches said to me, we're all survivors. And she thought that was a nice thing to say to me, and it just made me burst into tears. I never identified myself as a survivor, as a breast care survivor. I did not done the walks for the cure, and I have not gone to support groups, and I've not worn pink ribbons because it just wasn't my thing. What I did do, remind me to come back to what I did do. I started planning concerts to raise money, and I talked about what music and medicine did for me on this. But just because you're talking about the targeting the cancer cells, chemo was not fun, as you've read about. It did make me lose my hair, and every eyelash, and eyebrow. And it's horrible to feel so hideous, but I had a great family. I had these 2 young kids. It really makes all the difference. If you don't have a family, at least you should have friends. But my husband called me his little alien, and my children supervised the shaving of my head. Never shave your head, because that was a big mistake. Even if you start to lose all your hair, you're never going to lose all your hair, so you don't need to shave your head. That's what I try to tell women who think that that's the smart option. Don't do it. But my kids at that time were 10 and 15, and they were so great. And you know, if you have a close family, then you get through it, and you get through it because you just concentrate on the drugs doing their job. So you think, you know, every time this red poison flowed into me for 5 hours, I would just bring my favorite music, sit in that chair, and just try to, you know, lift yourself out of this horrible spot. It's hard. It's so hard. It's kind of like they say, I can't remember my state of mind, to tell you the truth. So when I recite it to you, I'm just kind of saying it, but I can't remember how awful it was. But it was awful because the chemo gave me 1,000,000 side effects. And each of the drugs that I took for the side effects had other side effects. So, you know, we'll take this drug if you feel this, and take this drug if you feel this. So in the day after chemo, I had to come back to the hospital to get the Neulasta. Is that what it's called? The white blood cell. Because even though they sell it at CVS, if you get it yourself, it costs $2,000. So you have to come back to the hospital. They give you a shot that boosts your white blood cells or something, right? Some of the drugs, at the same time, I guess I was taking, I don't know, I have no idea. Because it was now 9 years ago, and it's probably very different now. But some of the drugs made all the surface cells of my fingers die or something. So it was like peeling off dried Elmer's glue. It was really disgusting. And as a flutist, that was really, really horrible. And I started to get tingling in my fingers. I started to get thrush in my mouth. So it knocks off your whole immune system, and all this horrible, all these awful things happen. And it's just kind of this horrible lethargy that you can't even describe. So during that time, I run a music series, like Lisa said, I think, and I actually continued to play concerts. I would schedule these concerts. How did I do this? Oh, I scheduled the chemo so that it was the beginning of the week, and by 2 weeks later, right before the next chemo, the concerts would take place. And by then, I was fine. I was wearing a wig. My audiences knew me really, really well. They knew what was happening, so I was a little bit of a hero, and that was kind of nice. And the music really, really helped. Playing concerts just gave me the endorphins I needed to remember why life is so worth fighting for. And you know, the small things in life, like having your cat on your lap in bed while you're feeling disgusting, or you know, taking a walk in the sunshine, having smelling beautiful flowers. These really cliche small things in your day-to-day living are what get you through it. And then after the chemo was over, I did have radiation every day for 6 weeks. That was not a big deal. Some people said, schedule your friends to drive you in. I just drove myself in, did it, went home, feel a little tired, no big deal. For me, it was a piece of cake. And that's basically my skeleton of my story. But last time I was here, there were a lot of really, really good questions from people. So I'll start, well, just one more thing I want to add, which is that some of you guys last time said, what was your diet like before and after? Did it change how you lived life? The diet thing is that I've always been healthy, healthy eater, you know, basically mostly vegetarian, eat fish, lots of vegetables. You know, I know the drill. I didn't eat unhealthy stuff. I certainly didn't eat a lot of chemicals and processed foods or anything like that. But the funny part was that after I got diagnosed and I met people, no matter who I met, everyone always had their 2 cents to tell me what I did wrong, and that's why I got cancer. And it used to infuriate my husband because it implied that I did something wrong and I deserved it. I got it because I never gave up sugar, or I, you know, didn't give up dairy. And we'd meet one person who said, "Oh, you should read my book called The China Syndrome." This guy, do you know that book? Oh, well, it's about a certain study, China study. I don't know what it's called. But anyway, some guy wrote a book, and it's all about how the biggest culprits are meat and dairy. Long historical reasons why that's why people get cancer. And then other people said, "Oh, it's definitely sugar and stress." And then, you know, so that was pretty annoying. In terms of my attitude towards living life, I'm one of the lucky ones. I'd say this without too much self-servingness, in that I loved life before, I love life now, I live it to the fullest. It's not as if I suddenly have new priorities in life. I think I always had my priorities pretty straight. Yeah, I think that's about it. So I hope you have questions, because that leads to better discussion. Anybody get pretty, yeah?
Well, you asked us to remind you to say, instead of doing like the breast cancer pins and whatnot, why don't you do?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So, because I'm a musician and my living is spent organizing concerts, I decided that there was something I could do. And I organized already 2 big orchestral concerts in which it was kind of like a musical race for the cure. And I pulled together around 80 musicians, many from the Boston Symphony and some from other really fancy string quartets and everything. And I got a very, very famous conductor to come, Simon Rattle. I don't know if you guys are music people. Big shot in the world. But he's a friend of mine. I know him because I used to sub in the Boston Symphony where he guest conducted. And so he came, and that was already a huge coup. And I chose the pieces, and I came out and made a speech about how music and medicine both saved my life, and how music lovers know why we need music in our lives. But it wasn't until the red poison of chemo was flowing in my veins that I realized the transformative power of music, and that during my hours in the chair, I'd listen to music. It was like the most delicious love serum that, you know, got me through it. And when people handed me books on meditation and bath salts, I would just kind of smile politely, but really all I needed was music to get me through it. And so it was really fun to put music in that category, because we always want, you know, as musicians peddling concerts all the time, we want people to think of music as more than just a luxury made up of, you know, extras in the budget, but that it is our water and our air. That's, you know, basically my elevator pitch, because I'm constantly having to fundraise to support my series. So I did that once, I did that twice actually, and now I'm doing one in Paris in May. And that's a lot of work because it's hiring people from here and this and that. But I'll make the same speech, I'll just translate it into French. You know? Yes?
So you said that, like, if the room where you had the chemotherapy is pretty horrible.
Well, you know, when I say horrible, I just mean that I had higher expectations. They said, I thought it was going to look like a living room, because they said it's so nice. These chemo rooms are not what you expect. They are hospital rooms. They just have chairs that go back, and they smell terrible. For me, I can associate that smell with, you know, with how awful it made me feel. And they're perfectly nice. You don't want to eat, so you feel nauseous all the time anyway. And the people look so sad and so sick, and there were some young ones with no hair. I mean, I was one of them, but it's just sad. And the nurses, it just have so much respect for people in your field, all the way from the doctors to the nurses to the, you know, the radiologists, everybody who did everything for me. They were so wonderful. And the day after my last radiation, which was really my last treatment period, I don't know, the techie people, whoever were doing it for me, ripped up a little piece of paper and they threw it like confetti. It was so cute. And I almost cried and hugged everybody goodbye. And just as a small aside, my last treatment was on February 13th. So it was so perfect, because then for every February 14th after, I've always celebrated 1 year since, 2 years since, 3. So I'm up to 9 now. I've we skipped a couple of times when my father turned 90 because he's born on February 14th. But next year will be my 10th year. And then so we always had a party on Valentine's Day is what I'm saying. And it was unusual because everybody gave up their plans to go out with their husbands or something, and they came over and we had a chocolate fountain and people read poems. It was really nobody does this kind of thing, you know. So it was really fun. And hopefully, you know, they never say you're cured. They never say, yay, we got it all. They just say, well, there's an 87% chance that you won't get it back, which to me does not sound that good, but people say it's pretty good. And I don't think that I ever really believed that I would die, although I certainly could have. I know plenty of people who have died from cancer. When somebody, you know, people always say the wrong thing. If they say, oh, I'm sorry, I heard what you went through. I have a friend who just died of cancer. That is just the stupidest thing to say. They're trying to say that they empathize, but that's not the right thing to say. You don't say, oh, by the way, we lost one to the same disease you just had, you know. But, so people survive thanks to the most amazing state-of-the-art medicine, which is probably better now than it even was 9 years ago, right?
Hopefully.
Maybe do people still, does chemo still do the same things?
Yeah, I mean, I think Julie's just pointed out a few of the things that are these non-targeted effects. So the nausea, hair loss, immune system effects, the skin effects. So I wish that I could say that we're not using those drugs anymore, but we still use those drugs.
The
all
drugs
the
work.
time.
And once one of my friends said, just keep telling yourself, you've got to love